Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here reporting to you from the Munich overflow room. Well, this isn't really the overflow room. This is the flow room of my dear friend, Zurenmeyer Eller. And I am so grateful that he's let me use his office while I'm traveling in order to do a few of these things. Well, hey, Apple classical people, here's a news flash. Classical music doesn't come in tracks, except when they're presenting it that way, which is wrong. And it's really a pain in the ass. I've been playing with the new Apple Classical app here on my phone, which is right here. I mean, it's right there. There it is. There it is, the Apple Classical app. And I have to say, the more I use it, the more irritated it becomes. And it depresses me unutterably to have to explain that. But the issue is tracks. Tracks. Let me give you an example. And we talked about this a little bit when I introduced the service in a previous video. But, as you work with these things, you begin to see what's going on. And there's something that happens here that is so annoying. Oh, my God. So we have a browse thing, right? And let's say we go to Essentials. They have Essentials. Let me find the Essentials. Listen now. Recently played. Sometimes you can't even find things the second time around. Here we go. Track by track. Well, classical music doesn't always come in tracks. It comes in movements. It comes in works. It comes in pieces. And quite often, those movements are joined. They are connected. They are played without a pause. But if all you have is a track, then you're going to get things chopped off. And it's here we go. Essentials. We have composer essentials. Okay. Here we have Beethoven essentials. What do you get? You get bits. You get the first movement only of the Moonlight Sonata. Now, what's wrong with the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata? Nothing. It's lovely. I happen to not care about the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata. I like the finale. It's exciting. It's one of the most exciting things Beethoven ever wrote. It's marvelously tuneful. It's full of energy and excitement, and I just don't understand why you wouldn't give him the complete Moonlight Sonata. The whole sonata is essential, not just the first movement. It is wrong. It is evil to tell people that classical music comes in little sniglets. We all snigletify things the way we like, right? I'll play a movement of something I like if I don't have time to listen to the whole thing. We can make playlists that have all the excerpts and extracts that we want. But if you're trying to explain to people, as they claim to be, what classical music is, they have all this, the story of classical, the story. This is not, the story of classical is not a bunch of biographies of wackadoo composers and their, grotesque patrons. And it's the story of music. It's what music is, what music can be. And music in large forms is a large thing. And that's what needs to be explained, not this bullshit about how you want to have, just a movement of the Moonlight Sonata, because that's the one you know. And that's what makes it essential. Because that's the one we know. No, it's wrong. And not only that, but the finale of the Moonlight Sonata, let's just continue, shall we? The finale of the Moonlight Sonata is, in fact, a development or evolution of the first movement. I mean, it really is. The melody of the Moonlight Sonata is do, 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 do. And then on the fourth beat there, you hear da, da, da. With the fourth little triplet thing off the beat, do 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 dum ba-dum. Well, the finale is it's the same idea, spread out a little bit, and that and the second subject too. It's all based on the same motivic cells. And that's what makes listening to a great piece in a large form so thrilling, that you begin to hear these connections, that you realize that the composer is taking you on an expressive journey, which only ends at the end. And just because it comes in sections, and there may be pauses between those sections, doesn't mean that it's over. I mean, the great musicologist Donald Tovey said that the reason that large pieces occur in multiple movements And the reason you need additional movements is that the music ends before the emotional impact of it has time to establish itself, and thus it needs to continue. You want to hear a contrast, a something else. You want this story to go on. So nothing is essential if you're not presenting it complete. That's rule number one. And they don't. I mean, of course you can, if you know the stuff, you can do it, but they're pandering. That's what they're doing. They're pandering to the audience of people who only want to hear a little sniglet. And maybe it's probably a bigger audience than the audience of people who don't want sniglets, but that's not the point. They're saying that they're going to be doing justice to classical music, and they're trying to educate. Well, you don't educate people by encouraging bad habits or incorrect habits or mistaken assumptions. I mean, it's an obvious thing, right? So after the Moonlight Sonata, you've got a little bit of the F major violin sonata, the Adagio molto espressivo. Okay. And the first movement of the Fifth Symphony with the Vietta Phil and Carlos Kleiber, of course, because it would be much too difficult for them to pick like the best performance, or like Markevich and L'Amoureux. Yeah. Okay, never mind. Then you've got the second movement of the Seventh, and you've got the finale of the Pathétique Sonata. It's interesting. They call this Piano Sonata number 8 in C minor. They don't tell you it's the Pathétique Sonata. They don't use names. They don't use Kreutzer for the violin sonata. They don't use, Beethoven Symphony number 6 in F major. They don't call it the Pastoral. I mean, and it's the Ashkenazi Philharmonia recording. Ugh, why? Unbelievable, right? So you've got some very good performances, some not so good performances. It's a random selection of randomly chosen excerpts. That, to me, first of all, there's nothing original in doing that, right? You go to your record store and you get, classical music's greatest hits, and you buy some sort of compilation album. That's what this is. The little gray cells have not been operating in trying to create something that's either original or special or new or thoughtful. There's none of that there. None of that. But that's not the annoying part. I'm just going through this a little bit. Let's leave that aside for a moment. I'm putting this down. The big problem is tracks. And what I mean by tracks is I was listening last night before I did the review, which I also just did, of the Mahler 1 with Jaap van Zweden and the New York Philharmonic. Their exclusive content. Yay! They have exclusive content, right? Okay, fine. And I'm listening to this thing, and somehow, every single time I listened to the first movement, it started again. So I went to the scherzo, and it kept starting again. It keeps repeating the same track over and over and over. I could not get the whole symphony to play, beginning to end. It just repeated every single track endlessly in a loop. It was making me crazy. So finally, I had no idea what was going on. I went and looked it up online, repeating tracks and Apple Music things. And I went to a chat room where people were having the same issue, and there were instructions on how to get rid of the repeat. It turns out, let me show you. It turns out that if you play something, okay, here's this is the Mahler 5 that I'll be talking about at some point, maybe, with Van Zweden. And what you do is you go to this little thing on the bottom of your screen. See this little 3-line thing? You go to that 3-line thing, and it tells you what's playing next. And up here, see these little arrows? See these arrow things there? Those arrow things are repeats. And if you push that thing, God knows why, my finger must have grazed it or something, it will repeat every track one at a time, endlessly, everywhere, in your whole library. Everything here will do that, it seems. Or that's what happened to me. And you can push it again and it undoes it. But why even have that feature? I understand if you're listening to pop songs, if you've got something like that and it's 3 minutes long and you love it, you want to hear it endlessly, or a Chopin prelude even. I mean, okay, something short. You want to repeat it. You want it to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat until you're ready to die of boredom. Fine. Go ahead and repeat it. But that shouldn't be a default. It shouldn't be something that happens with a large piece of music. Let's say you do it with like Mahler 2, where the last 3 movements are all played without a break. And you wind up trapped in Orlicht, the 4th movement, forever. I mean, you may want to kill yourself. It's ridiculous. It should say to you, do you want to repeat this endlessly and maddeningly till you're ready to commit suicide? And then at least you have a choice. But they are not thinking of classical music like classical music. They're not thinking of works. They're not thinking of presenting things complete. Think about an opera. How would you like to be stuck in a secco recitative in a Handel opera for the rest of your life? I mean, it's ridiculous. Most of the time, the tracks on a classical record are not designed by the composer. They're designed by the producers. They put them in wherever they damn well please because they feel that any chunk of music that's longer than about 3 minutes needs to have a separate track. But what if it's a continuous thing, 25 minutes long? It should be continuous and 25 minutes long. I talked about this before, the problem with gaps that sometimes you hear in between the sections of pieces that are continuous. I mean, I gave up listening to the Strauss tone poems on Chandos a while back with Nimi Yarvi and the Scottish National Orchestra because Also Sprach Zarathustra, which is 32 continuous minutes, kept having pauses between every section. And it's just irritating beyond belief. Well, now you've got the same thing. These people are not thinking about classical music in terms of what it is, in terms of how best to present it, in terms of how to describe it to people, particularly people who don't know it. I mean, I've been doing this channel now for about 3 years, and there have been a lot of people who comment, and they talk about the fact that they're neophytes, they're new, and they want to learn about how classical music is. They want to learn what it is. They don't want to be told the wrong thing. And if it means that they have to sit down for 30 minutes and listen to 30 minutes of music, well, that's why they're here. People are going to Apple Classical to try and experience a better way of locating and sourcing and experiencing classical music. But the music industry thinks of classical music in terms of pop music categories and pop music playing times and pop music presentations. And so that's how the data is arranged by the record companies. And if the data is arranged in a bizarre way, then they've just sucked it up as it is. They haven't put 2 seconds of serious thought into how to present the music. And it's not hard. I mean, it may be that the people doing the programming, the people that put this together, know nothing about classical music. That wouldn't surprise me. I'm sure they have some people who know some things who are creating content. But the people who are actually presenting the stuff and who designed the program, they didn't care. And they didn't know. I mean, you can tell because, as my dear friend Surin Meyer Eller, who is sitting over there, and refusing to appear, right? Yeah, chuckle over there. Okay. He's saying, he first thing he looked at it and said, oh, look, they spelled Hillary wrong and Hillary Hahn. And they did. And Hillary, it has 1 L. They spelled it with 2. Sometimes they spell it with 1. They have both. Why? Because the data that they got came from where it came from. Some of it's corrupt, and they didn't know any better. And she's right here. She's like doing her essential tracks, which she describes herself as a special Hillary Hahn feature with her name misspelled. Isn't that flattering? I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's going to happen here. It's garbage in, garbage out. And I just have to say that because this business with repeating tracks endlessly and having features that are not only not suited to classical music, but actually damaging to the experience of classical music, it's just another streaming site in this aspect. Maybe they have more content. It could be they have the most content in the universe. But if you don't know how to present it, then who cares? What good is it? And so I'm saying this so that the people at Apple Classical, who I'm sure are vastly too smug and sure of themselves to give a damn what I have to say, or what people who really are interested in classical music know to be the reality. But here it is, for what it's worth. For what it's worth. Cool it with these excerpts. Make your essentials essential. Curate things by finding the best performances. Quite often it's not a mystery, particularly with the more popular works. And this track mentality, you got to lose it. This is not the way classical music operates. It just isn't. And so there you are. I mean, that's my latest take on this, because it's been frustrating me beyond belief for the past few days. Just finding a piece of music you want and to listen to it without interruption. Is that asking too much? Evidently so. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.